she's been on before. And I've been watching her out there protesting in D.C. with her mask on because we're still in a pandemic. And today she's on because I want to talk about a lot of calls and cries for defunding the police. What does that mean exactly? Let me welcome to the show. She is the senator from the great state of California, Senator Kamala Harris. Welcome.
Thank you, Karen. It's good to be with you. It's good to be with you.
Thank you. Before we get to defunding police, what led you to the streets this weekend?
I felt compelled to be out there and join in solidarity with folks who are marching and shouting for justice and to make sure that the life of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, and we could go on down the list, that they did not die in vain, and that we see that America is still a work in progress. And though we hold true and hold dear the ideal of equal justice under law, we've not yet achieved that ideal. And so we need to fight for it.
Before you got on, I was talking with Drew McCaskill about, is this a moment or a movement? Is this a performance, or is it performative, or is it permanent? And there's a public viewing of George Floyd today, and it reminds me of Emmett Till when his mother, Mamie, decided to open his casket, and it changed the trajectory of the movement. Do you think that George Floyd is a similar lightning rod? And why didn't the Emmett Till open casket lead to permanent change? Is this going to be permanent, or is it just one of those things where we'll, get distracted in a couple of months?
Well, there's Coretta Scott King actually had many sayings of her own, and one of them I'll paraphrase. And she said, "The fight for civil rights must be fought and won with each generation." And I think she had two purposes in saying that. One, it is the very nature of our fight for civil rights that whatever gains we make, they will not be permanent. So we have to stay vigilant. And then I think the second point that she was making in her admonition is, and therefore, knowing that they will not be permanent, knowing that's the nature of things, do not tire. Do not throw up our hands when it's time to roll up our sleeves. So when I look at this, and I do believe this is not a moment but a movement, when I look out there, and I was out there, I see people who seemingly have nothing in common, who have everything in common as they march and shout for the same things. What is different about this moment than Rodney King 30 years ago and Emmett Till before is that the broader society can no longer get away so easily with turning a blind eye to these injustices and these crimes, because they are now vivid, captured by smartphones, which are probably one of the many greatest achievements in our fight for civil rights. Because, Karen, it was interesting. People would come up to me, "Kamala, what's all of a sudden happening with all this police brutality and excessive force?" And I'd say, you sound like a colonist. Like you're just seeing it for the first time and you think you discovered it. It's been going on for generations, and generations of communities have been shouting and crying and pleading for something to be done. And now the world literally is seeing what we have known for generations and cannot turn a blind eye anymore. Mm.
You and the senator from my great state of New Jersey, Cory Booker, you guys are really fighting for this anti-lynching legislation. And you had one person in the Senate come out against it. He was trolled. We're talking about Rand Paul. Mm-hmm. But how do you reconcile with that in this time, in this moment, that somebody still would stand in the way of, and what will that legislation do? Just explain to folk why this legislation is important.
Well, first of all, and I encourage everyone, as one of your family holiday trips or for the summer or whenever you can pull together the resources, to go down and visit Bryan Stevenson's memorial and acknowledgement of lynching, and he has a museum dedicated to it. It is part of the dark sin of America. And I can go through the details, but we all know them. In particular, black men were snatched from their homes in front of their children. They were dragged by horse or by car. Many were castrated, were hung on trees. Vicious, violent acts for which those families never received justice. Very few did. Very few of the hundreds and hundreds. And still and yet, the federal government has yet to have acknowledged this fact of our history by passing a law to say it's a crime, that lynching is a federal crime under federal law. So Cory Booker has been supporting my bill along with the only other black senator. There are only three of us, Tim Scott, who is a Republican from South Carolina, and we actually got a unanimous consent by the United States Senate. And then Rand Paul, on the day of George Floyd's funeral, decides to put a hold on it over a very insignificant issue that I would argue, I won't get into the details of it, it's a legal argument, that it's literally not an obstacle. And I can't tell you why. I really don't actually have the answer to that. All I know, it was a very painful experience for both me and Senator Booker to have to go to the floor on the day, Karen,
of his memorial,
of this man's funeral.
Yeah.
To have to go into the United States Senate, for me, as only the second black woman ever elected to the United States Senate. And we're still fighting over whether lynching is a federal crime. And, so it was hurtful. It was insulting. And it just makes a statement about, to your point, how far have we come and how far we have to go. And that it will not be easy.
Michelle Alexander, who wrote, of course, The New Jim Crow,
wrote
a compelling piece in the New York Times today. And there's been a rallying cry. And I live in a state where Camden has actually done this to great results. And we saw Minneapolis reject the police in their schools. What is defunding the police, and what does it look like, and how can we get behind this?
Well, here's how I think about it. This conversation is about underfunding, right? We have underfunded and, frankly, defunded public education in America.
That's true.
We need to do a better job in investing in economic opportunities and access to capital for small businesses in low-income communities, in minority communities, and black communities. We need to invest in the public health system of America, including mental health care. We need to invest in what is necessary for any community to be healthy and therefore safe. And the problem with what we've been doing is that it's upside down, where we have confused the issue by thinking that to create safe communities, you need to put more cops on the streets. No. To create safe communities means to understand the causes of whatever crime it is that we see, which are usually about a lack of access to basic needs like health care, like education, like access to capital and economic opportunities and jobs. And so when I think about it in the context also of the fact that many cities spend more than one-third of their entire budget. Now think of all the responsibilities a city has. And they spend more than one-third of their entire budget on policing. We know that it is time to reimagine what we are doing in the interest of safety and healthy communities.
Is this something that can happen from the Senate, from Congress, or is this local? Is there something, because this administration is not going to be probably likely to make any changes in this area. There won't be any executive orders. I know that for a fact. So how do we support these efforts? And again, I know some local municipalities that have tried it to great success. How do we make this federal?
That's right.
And what's the push? I know you have to run.
Well, first of all, you're absolutely right, and there is so much about what all of these issues require for solutions that require the work to happen at a local and state level. But we dropped a bill today, Cory Booker, myself, other of our members of the CBC, Congressional Black Caucus, that is about justice and policing to create greater accountability and consequence for police who break the law. But in addition, we need to deal with this very big issue, which is the distribution of resources going into our schools and affordable housing and mental health care and things of that nature. And a lot of that will happen at the local level. It'll be cities, it'll be counties, it'll be states. But that doesn't mean that there's not a role for the federal government. I agree with you. Under this administration and under Donald Trump, it will never happen. Let's take as an empirical example of that he's got Bill Barr and the AG in court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which brought health care to 30 million people who didn't have it. But there are great mayors. Camden is an example. There are great mayors and county administrators and governors who are doing this work and who understand. We need to reimagine and understand how we can be smarter in truly achieving safer and healthier communities.
Well, I'm going to let you go because I appreciate you jumping in, and I'm going to hold you to coming back, and let's do this more frequently.
And thank you for your voice.
Listen, before I let you go, though, who spearheaded the Kente cloth wearing? Who did that? Who did it?
It was just kind of a CBC thing.
Okay. All right, Congressional Black Caucus. All right. Thank you so much, Senator Harris. You are doing God's work out there. I appreciate you. All right.